Hello and welcome to another episode of FinTech Focus TV with me, Toby Babb. And today I'm absolutely delighted to have one which has been in the pipe for some time. I'm really excited to bring onto the show Eric Soderberg from Forefront Communications. Eric, how are you?
I'm good, Toby. How are you doing?
Very good indeed. Very good indeed. I think this is probably about a year in the making, this one, isn't it? Since we first mooted the idea. So I'm really pleased to have it over the line. This is a subject and a part of the fintech world that I've always been massively passionate about. And I think you guys do a fantastic job. We're going to go into a lot about building brands in the space. As I think I mentioned to you the other day, I took a screenshot of a little campaign that you'd done talking about some of the wins that you've had and the common denominator of some of these big deals that we've seen in the marketplace being powered by the sort of brand work of Forefront, which I loved. I thought it was a great bit of content to put out there. I know I feel under pressure today because I know you're an expert podcaster. You guys do some great content that you guys are putting out there as well. So we've got lots to go into in that too. But we're going to be talking about why brand is so significant, and then we're going to talk about the marketing world as a whole, hiring your first marketing people, what they look like, how so lots and lots of good stuff to go into. But Eric, before we get into the good stuff, let's start with the best stuff. You and Forefront. Tell us a little bit about yourself and Forefront Communications.
That's a lot of pressure, Toby. We'll see how we do here. So yes, Eric Soderberg, managing partner, one of the co-founders of Forefront Communications. I have a background, dare I say, close to 30 years in fintech. More specifically than that, more of the institutional or B2B fintech space, less on the retail side. So very much institutional and capital markets sort of focused. And before Forefront, I'd like to mention this because we find it a really valuable experience to have had. And it's one that is also shared by Mark Dowd, who's the other managing partner and co-founder, and others on our team, is that I spent a lot of time before Forefront on the in-house as the head of marketing and communications for, I counted it up just before this this recording, 7 different firms.
Okay.
And we just feel like that in-house experience
gathers no moss, right?
It helps you really understand where, in our case, certainly our clients are coming from, whether it be the CEOs or the heads of marketing. So that's my background as a firm. Forefront, we do service that spot that I worked in, as did Mark. All of our clients are just about all institutional fintech sort of firms, some broker dealers, some capital markets firms as well. And we are a full service agency that is very specifically focused on that space. We offer branding capabilities, digital marketing, PR, all sorts of communications, pretty much soup to nuts.
Fantastic. As you said before, there's some pretty impressive companies that you guys have dealt with. I've looked at your work, as I mentioned beforehand.
Thank you.
And where there's something happening in the marketplace in that institutional finance slot, you guys are generally not too far away from it. So it's always good to see. And I've had the good fortune of interviewing a number of your clients on this show.
Yeah, that's right.
You've put over to it, and they've always got something interesting to say. It's a good roster.
Yeah,
so bags of experience to talk about, and as I said before, let's go back to your recent bit of work on LinkedIn that I mentioned beforehand. What stood out to me was there was a piece there which basically said, look, these companies, 4 or 5 companies there who've had recent events, there was a common denominator, and they were clients of yours. Now I know that's sort of something there, and you've been a big part of that sort of journey. I think sometimes the whole concept of brand gets seen as a sort of nice veneer type stuff, and people think about it, but it is to me a fundamental driver of value. And the businesses there that I've got seen have the most success, the people who've been on this show, I've got huge amounts of respect for, really get that, and they invest a lot in their marketing. I'm very pleased that we've seen brand and marketing come a lot closer to sales in recent years at the same sort of time. FinTech necessarily hasn't been the most natural bedfellow to that sort of world, but I think those that are grabbing it get a considerable trading advantage. Talk to me about your thoughts on building a solid brand, and actually, to more to the point, the importance and why it's so important for companies to have such a solid brand.
Yeah, well, thanks for referencing that's sort of a forefront marketing campaign that we just started, and it's called Be Next. And you're right, we highlight, in this case, 4 different sort of case studies of firms that turned to forefront for brand work initially, and several of them then sort of outsourced all their marketing and communications to us. And in each case, they had very successful results, whether that be billion-dollar valuations, literally inside of 3 years, successful acquisitions by some big firms out there at great numbers. So that's our challenge we're putting out there to the CEOs, the CROs, the CMOs in this institutional fintech space is, work with Forefront and you can be next.
Love that.
Specifically brand work. In each of those case studies, brand is one of the common denominators, and what we did for these firms. And we are super passionate about that work that we do, because we think it is like critically important. From in-house experience and also a lot of the conversations we have with, current CEOs and CROs, we hear, oftentimes these folks will say, I don't understand how we're not, doing better. We've got the best product, right? We've got the best salespeople. We've got the best engineers. We're spending a ton on marketing.
Mm,
What is wrong? And we would suggest, and oftentimes it can be obvious, when you look at these companies, the problem is they have a weak brand.
mm,
And you say, well, brand, I think you made this point. A lot of firms in our space do not take brand very seriously, which is ironic because these same sort of people that we try to pitch to and talk to are people who do put a premium on brands in their personal lives all the time,
yeah.
right? They tend to be affluent. They're buying the BMWs, the Porsches, probably go for the Tiffany ring and the Evian water. Like they do buy into strong brands in their personal lives, but for some strange reason, they don't think it applies in B2B technology. And
Yeah.
we would say it absolutely does. So I would say the things that are most critical when it comes to brand is, one, you have to have the right messaging. A lot of firms, unfortunately, just talk in very generic benefits that are not that compelling. Everybody is helping with workflow efficiency.
Mm,
Everybody's helping you make smarter decisions,
mm,
save money, save time. You have to evolve and get way more specific on that. Move away from these generic benefits. But once you get great messaging down that speaks really to your differentiators, you need to put the time into figuring that out. Like, really, how do we compete? If you're a buy-side OMS, there are no shortage of those. You need to really understand how you compete and how you win, and make sure you play that up all the time. So once you do have the right key messages, consistency is huge.
mm,
So this is another sort of scenario that we also see, like where, the salesperson, this also comes again from in-house experience, seeing this happen often. The salesperson comes back from the big pitch. He says, I really rocked it. They loved the presentation. They thought this was the greatest thing ever.
never the great. It's never the great what you want to hear on that, isn't it? It's the
That's
same
it.
as when
Well, it,
someone comes out of an interview and says, "I absolutely smashed it." We're all always shaking our head.
well, he may even get, but he may even have done it. He or she may have actually crushed it. But what they don't see is that they gave this great presentation, said some great things, then they left some material behind. And when the meeting's over, the person they were talking to goes back to their desk, starts flipping through the material, and he's like, this sounds a little different than what he just told me.
Mm,
A lot of the stuff he said is in here, but I don't know. I see a lot of other stuff in this material that he didn't even talk about. That's a little confusing to me.
mm,
And then he might go on to that firm's website and see a whole different set of messages and be like, gosh, this doesn't sound at all like what he was telling me. This website says they're all about their superior technology. He was talking all about their amazing support,
mm,
service levels. Credibility now. I'm wondering, like, is this guy, what is he talking about? Right. So I call for a second meeting. Now I get that person's boss to come in, right? Who runs all the salespeople globally. He's gonna set the record straight, and he tells a completely different story.
Yeah.
So now credibility is shot.
Yeah.
You don't know what happened, and the problem was you weren't all on the same page. So message
Consistency.
consistency
Yeah.
is huge. And the final piece is you need to have a quality looking brand. You cannot rely on, and we hear this a lot. Oh, my friend knows somebody who's a graphics designer. They could do that for you. I've got a cousin who's in graphic design. Let them do. And look, there's plenty of talented people out there, and you might find a talented person that can help, but you need to put a premium on the look and feel. Going
Yeah.
back to the personal experiences you have, you can tell quality when you see it.
Yeah.
You
And that
just can.
comes down to the sort of brand book and brand
It
guidelines,
does.
and there's
It
so few
does.
companies out there who I think even subscribe to that sort of notion as well, right?
Yeah. So it has to be high quality, but it also has to align with the story you tell. It
Mm.
doesn't, if your story is all about amazing client service, that's your pitch, that's your differentiator. In a crowded space, that's what you're going to hang your hat on. And someone goes to your website and it really looks super high tech. There's not a picture of a person anywhere.
Mm.
There's going to be that disconnect.
Yeah.
It's not going to resonate. And when it's all said and done, even if you nail all that stuff, you have to keep it up and you have to keep it consistent. We hear
Yeah.
people say, hey, you're doing an amazing job for this client. We see them everywhere. We want to talk to you about PR. We'll start thinking, well, PR is just one of the things we do. But this prospect has the idea that this other company is everywhere because every time they see them,
Mm.
they know exactly at a glance who that company is.
Mm.
And they're hearing the same key messages over and over again. So they have this feeling that they're everywhere because everything is so aligned. It does a much better job of achieving that than different colors being used and different fonts and different messages. You don't even know you're seeing that same company. So it all comes together in the end to really raise visibility, make sure key points are getting across, and having a material impact on the sales process and whatever else you're trying to do. So that's a brand pitch for me. But we think
So,
it's huge.
so I imagine you're talking to a lot of people in this space, and look, let's make no bones about it. Most people in there are good. They're intelligent. They know what they're doing. They've built businesses which they're proud of.
Yes.
The issue when you're building a business which you're proud of is obviously you've got some serious leaning and bias to it. So when you're talking to someone who's got a brand which I imagine 9 times out of 10 they're going to be pretty proud of and think
Always.
that it is better than the rest and absolutely on point. How difficult is it for you to be telling people, look, this has got inconsistency to it and it's not quite what they thought they were on the tin?
So that comes in two. That's so it's funny when you started saying that. The thing that jumps to mind is so many of the founders that we work with have designed their own logos,
Okay.
and they will not let you touch the logo, and they are really bad. So a lot of times what we do is we say, we promise we won't touch your logo. When we deliver the first brand to them, we show it with their logo, and then we show them one. We just go ahead and do it. And they are 9 times out of 10 say, oh my gosh, that
Yeah.
is so much better. Thank you. So we don't engage much. We can tell right away if they are passionate about their logo.
Tread
But if it
carefully.
doesn't work, we'll offer up an option. But yeah, so that's one. And so visually, that's the big one. But how they talk about themselves, a lot of the work we do up front, we focus a lot on the key message development, and we'll play back to them how their people in the organization talk about themselves, how analysts and reporters talk about that firm. We show them how their competitors talk about themselves. It makes it easy to see how the same old is going to sound. First of all, not everybody's on the same page saying the same old, but it's not differentiating at all. It's not
Mm.
interesting at all. And seeing all these things lined up next to each other, I think most times the founders, the CEOs, they're like, you know what? That's insightful. Had not been thinking about it that way. I understand why we should do that. The other thing too is oftentimes we force people to try and come up with it's 4, it's 5, 6 key messages at most.
Yeah.
A lot of times they say, oh yeah, we know exactly who we are. And it's a manual. It's 10 pages long. There's so much in there that you wouldn't have a chance of remembering what
Yeah.
the key messages are. So we force that. We force people to make tough decisions to really narrow things down and get focused. So, but
You
you're right.
highlighted
There's
this
pushback.
a little while ago where
Yeah.
you talked about the companies in this sort of space generally are selling on 3 or 4 different things. They're selling on efficiency, they're on cost reduction, friction reduction, all of the above,
Capacity.
speed, capacity, all of those various things. We hear it day after day across the space, and of course that's the benefit which they're giving. That's what they're
Yep.
selling. That's what the product does, and there's only so many things a product can do within this space. And I always say, look, there's a lot which reduce costs, and I think there's a lot which increase productivity. And productivity is the main game in a zero-sum game.
100%.
Everything's becoming more and more expensive, so your margins are more eroded. You've got to boost productivity. When you have that, and most people are playing in the same sort of area with the same sort of product, how does a brand stand out in that sort of space? What can and particularly one where we're not talking about B2B, and you can have the sort of Budweiser ads and all that sort of thing, which get into people's heads. You're not talking about jingles. How does a professional brand in a financial services conservative market leave an impression when their product will be different, obviously, but answering the same sort of things? You mentioned buy-side OMSs as, for example. I can think of a dozen buy-side OMS systems, and to say, right, why would one, there's obviously brands I recognize more, there's the ones I'm closer to, have better relationships with. But what do you think it is that gives it a brand that snap for people to be saying when they think of a buy-side OMS, they think of company X?
It's those things I mentioned before. Actually, let me back up and address one thing you said. You said Budweiser, and I think you were referring to like just a massive, massive budget, right?
Yeah.
The
Or a
concepts.
catchy jingle. I was thinking of the frogs on
Yeah.
the pads when that one came out in my head.
Yeah. Well, there actually, there's 2 things. If you think to, and we use the term, we're talking about brands and branding. That is, you ever seen a brand that they use to brand cattle?
Yeah.
A brand on the side of a cow, a steer, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
In order to get a good brand on the animal, you need to have 2 things. The thing needs to be very hot, and you need to apply pressure for a period of time.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time talking about the heat part, the proper messaging, consistency of the messaging with the look and feel, compelling narrative for the company. That's the heat part. And then there's the pressure part, which is, okay, well, if I have this amazing brand and I just have a website and I have nothing else, that's not going to be very effective.
Mm-hmm.
You need to apply the pressure. You need to have a robust social campaign. You need to be putting out thought leadership pieces. You need to be in the press. You need to be at events. So those are the 2 components to having a strong brand, the heat and the pressure. And an unbelievable amount of pressure could overcome some weakness on the heat, and vice versa.
Yeah.
In our space, where most marketing budgets are not massive, and we've worked with some very large firms, both on brand, but in projects, big budgets. I'd say our sweet spot client is just got their Series A. They're looking to scale up. They still don't have massive budgets for the spend for the pressure part. So it's those 2 things that go into it. But so it's you got to have the right balance in order for it to really work. So again, you could have great messages, great look and feel, aligned, look and feel with the messages, beautiful website, all that could be there. But if you're not doing any of the other programs, it's not going to get you very far.
And we spoke about this when we chatted the other day about how when you've got a good brand. I mean, as I say, there's a hubris around a number of people sometimes and I don't think there's too many companies that think we haven't got this instantly recognizable, iconic sort of brand that comes around it. When you're sat there and looking at it, what do you think how can you tell if you've got that good brand? How can you tell if that brand's working for you and is out there in the marketplace?
I'd say it's so what we say to people all the time is ask your employees, ask them a very simple question. Who is Harrington Star in your case? Go around the office, all levels, who is Harrington Star, and see what they say. Don't know about you guys. I can tell you that when we do our branding exercise, the answers are all over the map.
Yeah.
And I go further to ask questions about, well, how are you different? How are you better? And everybody understands what the business does, but their way of talking about it is wildly different. They will describe an OMS. You'd say, what do you got? We're a trading platform. We're an OMS. We're an OEMS. We're a POEMS. We're a trading system and a network. I mean, you can't even the basics are just not aligned. So that's a great test any firm should do. Walk around, ask the questions, see what they hear. I would then say, ask someone to name a firm in their space. Well, it doesn't have to be exactly in their niche within the fintech, but what fintechs do you really admire? And get a name, pull up their website, and just look at that company's website compared to your own. My hunch is that those ones that you really respect have a pretty nice, pretty sophisticated looking website.
Yeah.
So those are two quick tests, I think, to help you understand if you have a good brand or not. I'd say the other piece too is pull up your most recent sales deck, pull up your most recent press release, pull up the homepage of your website, and read those three pieces and see if they are saying the same thing. And most often they're not. They're close. And that's the thing. People say, well, they're close enough. I would argue that they should be really, really close.
It's a really fascinating way of thinking of it. I'm learning a lot as I'm talking to you. I'm thinking a lot about it. Look, we get complimented a lot around the brand and who and what Harrington Star and the work we've done on it all, and I'm always very flattered around that sort of thing. But I also then think as when you're talking there and I'm looking over my screen at the floor and thinking, right, if I go around there, am I going to get the same sort of stuff? I'm thinking now about my website. I'm thinking about the decks and saying, have we got that consistency? And it's a really interesting way of looking at it. It's quite an exciting thing to look at. So when you're working with businesses, and look, as you mentioned, there's a number there that you've helped to on the B-Next program to get to the exciting sort of returns. Is that a journey which you've been on with them? Is that something which and why do you think that has such an impact on driving their performance, their return? Because I get it, and it's an important part of the sales process, etc. But there's lots of different areas of a business that can take credit for where it goes.
Sure.
What sort of impact do you think having a brand can have? And this is there's books all behind me, building a founder brand. There's all sorts of different. I'm fascinated about the whole process of it. I'm fully into the concept of brand and marketing. But from your perspective, who lives, eats, and breathes it day in, day out, seen the benefit of it all, having that powerful brand with consistent messaging, what actual sort of an impact do you think it has on a business being able to go from A to B?
So I think so going back to Anheuser-Busch, they have a value on their brand, and they could take and answer that question with a lot of substantiated data. The reality is, in our space, it's hard to measure. I mean, as a marketing organization, you always want to track leads, you want to track followers, you want to talk engagement on emails, site visits. I mean, those are the common things. You could check sentiment in the news and get a degree of positive or negative on that. I mean, those are the normal things. But to try and say the brand holistically is responsible for that particular sale or those particular two is next to impossible.
Yeah.
What I would offer though is that firms we've worked with after the brand, they are immediately feeling more buzz.
Yeah.
They are more people are engaging on a hey like on a personal level with the folks at these firms and on a business level.
Yeah.
They're like, I'm getting more emails. I'm getting more questions. They then get I never had to report a call before. Like, what do I do? So those things would just the brand alone. Second part is for 3 of the 4 people that we case study in that campaign, and there are several others. We did that exercise up front, and then we managed, with the outsourced CMO and outsourced marketing department. So we then would take the brand, launch it in a pretty specific way, and then we've had our plans set and ready, and now we're executing on social media. We have the thought leadership or content calendar built out, so we know we're going to be. We know when press releases are coming. We know when events are coming, and we work all of those different programs together to optimize the whole experience. So, yeah, businesses. We give businesses a much better chance of growing. Like, we cannot, obviously, we're not making their product better. And if their product just cannot compete head to head, that's going to be, it's a tough thing to overcome. But getting more opportunities to sell, having people know what the business stands for, understanding the differentiators that should be valuable and compelling, it all adds up with every single interaction. Nice, email templates looking professional, like looking buttoned up, looking trustworthy. It all adds up.
It's a value raiser, isn't it? That's as far
It
as
sure is.
it sort of comes into it. And like you said, look, you can't put lipstick on a pig if it's if it's there. But if you've got the right tech and the right engineers and the right people and the right branding and marketing and sales and everything put together, they're all significant parts of a jigsaw. That I think if you've got all of those things and a terrible reputation and terrible brand and inconsistency, I think it makes it a lot more difficult for you.
Look, anybody we talk to, it'd be like, Toby, I'm sure you get as many emails as I do, solicitations to help with lead gen and all this sort of stuff. And if you ever go and look at the website these people are reaching out on behalf of, if it looks terrible, you just totally dismiss it. But a lot of times we talk to folks in the fintech space, they don't think it applies to them. They think that, no, you don't understand. Our product is so much better. I'm like, but you don't even have the opportunity to talk to these people because they're dismissing you out of hand.
All the avenues to sort of get those eyeballs, engage those people, do all those different things. I think it's so important to
absolutely
have that funnel and be able to add people to that funnel and nurture and convert them over that sort of time. I think it's important. I mentioned just now the sort of headcount piece, and I think that's probably, with the day job, an important part to look at. So that you deal with businesses at various different levels of scale, as you said at the start. And I think a lot of the companies who first dip into outsourcing their marketing will be people there who are, what are the sort of founders that we're seeing at the moment? We're seeing founders who are techies. We're seeing founders who potentially come up from the institutional finance sort of world. We're seeing founders who are product people. We're seeing more and more founders who've come from legal backgrounds into the fintech space. What we're rarely seeing is people who are marketeers starting a business in financial, financial technology. So it feels like it's always a sort of far gone piece for them to look at that, but it becomes something that people are interested in quite quickly, but don't necessarily have the skill sets or the reserves. And what sometimes they'll do is they'll look around and say, right, we've got our Series A, or we've just got our seed funding, so let's go and hire someone to come into that sort of thing, be our marketing person. And that marketing person is then suddenly being a content writer. That marketing person is then being a brand designer. That marketing person is being, a podcast producer. It's all of this enormous range of people, and they tend to do nothing particularly well, and the brand doesn't then grow off the back of it. I know where you guys come from on this sort of advice about when to hire and how to do it, and it's probably a little bit of shoot myself in the foot here when we talk about this, but it's there's a time, and what I do agree with is the time to bring things in-house while still engaging with external. I don't think that time is necessarily right at the start. And so talk to me about your thoughts on what that looks like, and how companies should approach and engage with marketing as they go on their journeys.
That's right. And when we get this question, it always sounds so self-serving, but it's important, again, and I know I've referenced this several times. I spent 20 years, as did Mark, the other co-founder and managing partner, and our head of client service. We spent the majority of our careers in-house. So we have this recommendation based on the experience from being there, as well as being in the agency. And if you were to look at a firm, that's the Series A, that is probably our sweet spot, and probably where this question is most relevant, because you're right. People are, the salesperson has been doing what they can to put sales collateral together, and that they know that's not their job, and they want to be selling. That's not their core competency. Or the CEO's taking the time to try and reach out to reporters. That's not his best use of time. But they say, look, we need to do something about marketing and communications. They may not even be, they may think about, we need a new website, but not really thinking about it, a brand. And I think they think, okay, it's probably I need to hire somebody, or I need to go get an agency. That's obviously the binary things. We think a firm in that situation, we think, as we talked about at the beginning, the quality brand is the most important and the first thing that firm should consider addressing. If you have a horrible brand, weak website, undefined messaging, you are going to be wasting a lot of time and money at trade shows and advertising and PR, because the experience, like you're all of these programs, all they do is get people to your website, is what they're focused on doing, where you hope they will get your contact information and reach out. They will come to your website. They're not getting your phone number anywhere else. That's the place. And if that is a weak experience, you are wasting money on other things. So you need a brand. So we would say to any firm, again, any firm at any stage should make sure they have a quality brand. But that's Series A. That's when you have some money to make some investments. That should be the first thing you tackle with an agency, with somebody who does that brand work. And in our space, they should have a track record of doing this for other fintechs. It's very common that a fintech will be, hey, I've got this agency. They did Nike's, or they did Sony, or, and that sounds very attractive. Not having the knowledge of fintech and that market and that space,
absolutely agree.
It's an exciting idea, but at the end of the day, it's going to be really, really hard to get the brand you're looking for. And you'll be writing all the copy yourself, because that agency won't be able, unlikely be able to write the copy that you need, understand the market, all the nuance. It's very challenging. So I would say get an agency that knows the space.
It's not an easy space, is it?
It's not. It's very, very difficult. The person on the street has never heard of a post-trade allocation system. They don't even know what that is. Let alone explain it and understand the value prop. How could they write about it?
Let alone most in the industry as well.
It's extremely difficult. So you need that. I think you go to an agency, you got to get the brand. And then you got to think about, okay, so brand, the heat, how's the pressure going to come? And again, you have this other question. Should I ask an agency to do this work for me, or should I hire somebody? The challenge with hiring with somebody that is at that stage is you will need this person to be good at brand management, design. They'll need to be very good writers to write the thought leadership piece you're going to need. They're going to have contacts and relationships with the media. They're going to need to be digitally savvy to understand HubSpot and all these tools. And they're going to need to do all of that all at once. It is not possible to find an individual that can do that. Even if your budget was unlimited, and chances are people are looking to spend $150,000, they think that'll solve their problems. The first thing that person would say, if they are at a senior enough level to be the CMO, is, I need to go get a PR agency. I need to hire a designer. I need my inbound specialist, right? That is how those conversations go. So what we think is that in the early days, you should outsource to a full service agency. Get the right plans in place from people with experience in putting together robust strategic and tactical marketing plans in this domain. Get your common programs running. Your socials got to be running, events, thought leadership. You got to have resources to continue to evolve your website, keep it up to date, and PR. You need to have those things moving. I think you get those programs moving with the help of an agency. At that time, I think it makes sense to start to look at bringing someone in-house.
Yeah.
The CRO, the CEO, there comes a point where they have better things to do than manage the marketing resources. So that's when you bring someone in-house, and we think like then it's time to bring in someone that is pretty senior, that is doing some tactical execution, but it knows the space, knows all the programs well enough to actually direct, collaborate with the agency to continue to get what they need and be that sort of more than a gatekeeper, like the strategic gatekeeper. So there's always this back and forth between the agency and the firm. That's the person who gets that input from the agency, collects the feedback, plays it back. And then as time goes on, it could be very natural to bring in your own PR person. If that's the program you see potentially giving you the greatest upside. Maybe it's a digital marketing specialist. But so then you can go specialized after that, eventually round out a team, maybe no more agency support needed. But that is the progression that we see work best.
And I actually think that alongside that, it doesn't necessarily exclude it from a from an agency perspective, does it? I sat in on a presentation recently, a mock presentation for a CMO who we placed with one of our clients.
Okay.
A relatively, they're probably at Series B sort of scale at the moment, and they were hiring this CMO. He gave a presentation I thought was spectacular. He got the job, off the back of it. But one of the things that sort of raised interest for me was he was talking about the budget that he put, or how he'd apportioned his budget.
Sure.
And a significant amount of that portion of budget was to agency spend within that. And I thought, right, should he be putting that into it when he's going for a job as a CMO within that he's outsourcing some of his parts within it? And the more I thought about it, the more it made absolute sense. And it goes back to what you're talking there about specialization and bringing skills in. And and I guess it's that scale and scope of everything that people can do at the same sort of time, isn't it? You can't be all things, and you can't have you've got to know where your weak spots are and bring people in who are the pros at it, and that makes absolute sense to me.
Yeah, well, look, even if you are a pro, if you are a pro at all these things, the outlier is the design. It's rare that you find someone who is an amazing graphic designer who's also an incredible writer.
Yeah,
that's just like those are very hard to find. Two different types of people. But even if you are great at all these things, you can't do it all in a timeline that any CEO is interested in. You can't do it.
yeah.
You can't work. It cannot work fast enough. So that's the thing. And I would also offer the other reason I think it makes a lot of sense to outsource a lot of this at the beginning is that, look, you bring in someone and for whatever reason, there's not a good match culturally, or they're overwhelmed with work, they leave. Like you're in now you got a real problem on your hands.
Absolutely.
Your agency is not leaving you. Like
that key man dependency is a critical part of it.
Yeah, and you can look, if business is going great, you can scale up your agency. If your business is going poorly, you can scale them down. They're way more flexible. You can do that with a phone call, let alone having to unwind somebody from their job, which is like, that is a lot of work. Finding another person is a tremendous amount of work. People need to use folks like yourselves or your business wouldn't exist, right? If that was so easy to go find people.
Keeps us in a job.
It's a lot of work. So so again, reasons why I think you scale into building out the team, I think makes a lot of sense for both money reasons, time reasons, just a smarter way to approach it.
Absolutely. I could be talking about this for days. And I think I mentioned to you at the start, Eric, that this is the sort of conversation that disappears like that. And you've absolutely nailed it, as I hoped you would. But let's finish by talking a little bit about Forefront. Tell me a little bit about who the sort of businesses that you can really be helping, who should be reaching out to you, and what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, it would, we've mentioned it a bunch of times. Look, we've worked for firms with no product, with no clients, with owners who appreciated the value of a good brand and website even before they had a product to sell. We worked with firms on that scale. We're doing in the midst of a couple websites now for some massive companies out there, trading companies. We've done projects at the biggest of the big, the Broadridges, the S&Ps, and that sort of thing. Our sweet spot would be that Series A level, like we keep talking about, a firm that has a product, They have clients, they have potential, and investors have recognized that, and they've received an investment, 5 million, 50 million, whatever it might be. And they want to really scale the organization, scale the business, increase revenue. Now, a lot of times these firms also have in mind that successful exit or acquisition at some point. And this is a way to just sort of, they want that growth thing to go in that direction. So that is a type of firm. Again, it's the trading technology firms, the compliance technology firms. We work with data providing firms, regulatory reporting type firms, crypto exchanges, crypto trading technology. I mean, it runs the gamut in that sort of institutional space. And yeah, we help with the brand, the website, and then get them started with a really smart strategic marketing program. And oftentimes help them interview, the first marketing person they want to hire. So that's usually how it goes. And yeah, you can go to our website, forefrontcoms.com. Find our contact information there, and we're happy to have a chat.
Some good stuff in there as well.
We actually offer the free brand assessments. I probably gave away the secret sauce there with the simple questions you can ask your team. But yeah, happy to talk to anybody about initial reactions on their brand and things they could focus on. That's just generally love doing that.
That's a good plan. Well, listen, I know you've got an exciting afternoon to get to as well. Some pretty important golf to be played this afternoon. So, Eric, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for taking the time to come on today and for joining us on the show.
My pleasure, Toby. Thank you very much for having me on. Appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. And we'll catch up with you all soon. Thanks for watching the episode, and we'll see you on the next one of FinTech Focus TV very soon. Thanks a lot.
Take care.